In light of the recent federal uncertainty over Amtrak and our nation's countrywide passenger rail service, I think it's due time that I pick up a series that I dropped quite a while ago. Today, we'll continue the Exploring American Railways series, checking out all of the commuter and regional rail services in the lower 48 states. Welcome back to D-Transit and to the Exploring American Railways series. In this series, we'll explore America by rail, picking up and finding the hidden commuter rail gems scattered across America's many urban and suburban areas. With New Jersey Transit, Long Island Railroad, Metro-North Railroad, and Connecticut's Shoreline East and Hartford lines done, I think the next natural progression is to move north, to the Boston area, where MBTA operates its network of commuter rail services under the MBTA Commuter Rail arm. The fifth busiest commuter rail system in the United States, MBTA's commuter rail services saw 30 million riders in 2024, with an average of 102,000 riders per weekday. The 12 lines covered 394 miles and 137 stations of the greater Boston and New England area. All lines converge and terminate at one of Boston's two primary rail terminals, North Station and South Station. North Station is also the terminal for Amtrak's Downeaster service to Maine, and South Station is the northernmost end of Amtrak Northeast Corridor services, including the Northeast Regional and Acela. Incredibly, the two stations, despite being 1.5 miles apart, are not connected by revenue trackage. Instead, the only connection between the two stations is via the Grand Junction branch, which is a single-track non-revenue line that runs through Cambridge and the campus of the Massachusetts Institute of Technology to connect the two lines. The origins of MBTA's commuter rail network stem from the mid-19th century, when 8 radiating intercity main lines opened within 20 years. The Boston and Worcester, Boston and Providence, Boston and Lowell, Eastern, Fitchburg, Boston and Maine, Old Colony and Fall River, and Norfolk County were the 8 railroads that opened to service Boston's metro area. Over time, the railroads began to merge. By the 1880s, the Boston and Maine Railroad had obtained a monopoly over services north of Boston, and built North Union Station as their terminal in Boston, later to be replaced by today's Boston North Station. On the southern side, the two majority railroads were the New York, New Haven, and Hartford Railroad and the Boston and Albany Railroad. The New York, New Haven, and Hartford Railroad was the owner of today's Northeast Corridor, while the Boston and Albany, later the New York Central, controlled much of the other branches. The two railroads came together in 1899, when South Station was constructed. Through the 20th century, ridership steadily declined, owing to the First and Second World Wars and the accession of motor vehicles and expressways. Through the 50s and 60s, numerous services were cut as private passenger rail companies began going into financial distress. In 1964, the newly created Massachusetts Bay Transportation Authority, or MBTA, began subsidizing the Boston and Maine Railroad's operations, initially only for services that remained within the MBTA's service district radius. The agreement was later expanded to out-of-district service. The same theme ran for the next 10 years, as subsidies were provided for the southern lines. By 1971, Penn Central, the consortium of the New York Central and Pennsylvania Railroads, fell apart, and the New York Central's trackage went up for sale. The state of Massachusetts purchased 145 miles of Penn Central rights-of-way, which included the future right-of-ways for the Attleboro Line, Franklin Branch, Needham Branch, and the Worcester Main Line. For the next 10 years, MBTA continued subsidizing operation of its routes to the B&M, while adopting the network of commuter rail as its own, integrating it into a unified rail system. The B&M continued operation of the system, as infill stations opened up in the 1980s, as well as additions to the rolling stock. In 1986, after the purchase of the B&M by Guilford Transportation, labor strikes soured service and severed relationships, leading to a contract change in operator, as Amtrak took over operating duties for the system. As MBTA took more control over the system in the 1980s, expansions occurred across the system, including a new below-ground alignment for the Northeast Corridor south of Boston, and rebuilt stations in Back Bay, Forest Hills, and Ruggles. MBTA also added more service to Worcester and Middleborough, and opened Newburyport and Rowley. MBCR took operational control over from Amtrak in 2003, but on-time performance concerns meant a lack of a contract extension. While the agency proposed a public option operation, they ultimately dismissed it in favor of another contract, this time for the French operator Keolis, who maintains operating rights of the MBTA commuter rail to this day. From 2007 to 2016, MBTA made multiple improvements, including the opening of the Greenbush line, extending the Providence-Stoughton line to Wickford Junction in Rhode Island, and the Cape Flyer service, which offered seasonal direct service from Boston to Cape Cod. MBTA operates an all-diesel push-pull style service across its 12 lines, using 109 GP40MC, F40PH, and HSP46 diesel locomotives as the power and traction source for its non-powered passenger coach cars. Its 448 active coach cars are a mixture of single and bi-level styles from a range of manufacturers, their most recent being a 2024 delivery of bi-level cars from Hyundai Rotem. The 12 commuter rail lines radiate from downtown Boston, stretching in every direction, 8 of them terminating at South Station, while the other 4 terminate at North. We'll go through each and every one. We'll start with the Providence-Stoughton line, which runs from Boston South Station to either Wickford Junction or Stoughton. The Boston-Wickford Junction portion of the line operates on the Northeast Corridor alongside Amtrak services, while the Stoughton branch splits near Canton Junction in Massachusetts to service Stoughton. It is the busiest line in the system, with 17,648 people using the line each weekday in 2022, a figure that has surely increased since then. As part of Phase 2 of the South Coast Rail project, the Stoughton branch would be extended southward towards Taunton, where it would connect to the New Bedford and Fall River branches. The Newburyport-Rockport line originates at Boston North Station, traveling roughly northward to Beverly on former B&M Railroad tracks. At this point, trains either continue northward towards Newburyport or branch eastward to service Manchester, Gloucester, and Rockport. 19 stations are along the route, which saw 11,333 daily riders in 2022. The Framingham-Worcester line originates from Boston South Station and travels westward, hitting Newton, Wellesley, Framingham, and Westboro, terminating at Worcester after 16 intermediate stations. Alongside the Fitchburg line, it is one of 2 lines to service more central areas west of Boston, albeit very short of Springfield. The Franklin-Foxborough line runs between Boston South Station, Forge Park, and Foxborough. On weekdays, trains use the Northeast Corridor before branching to the Franklin branch, while on weekends, trains utilize the Fairmount Line branch from Boston. Near Walpole, trains either branch south to service Foxborough or continue on the Franklin branch to service Franklin. The Lowell line runs from Boston North Station in a northeasterly direction, servicing 7 stations before terminating at Lowell. The line is 25.4 miles long and saw 6.4 thousand riders per weekday in 2022. The Haverhill line runs from Boston North Station in a northern direction to Haverhill, near the New Hampshire-Massachusetts border. The line follows the same track as Amtrak's Downeaster service, which continues northward into Maine after Haverhill. Currently, trains terminate at Bradford, while a bridge in Bradford is replaced. Service is expected to be restored to Haverhill in mid-2025. The next 2 lines, the Middleborough-Lakeville line and the Kingston line, are grouped into one category, the Old Colony lines, due to their history. Both lines originate at South Station, before heading south to Braintree Station. At Braintree, the Middleborough-Lakeville line heads south to Middleborough. This is the setting for the South Coast Rail Phase 1 extension. The Middleborough-Lakeville line will transform into the Fall River and New Bedford line, which will extend southward to service Fall River, Taunton, and New Bedford. Service will start on the 24th of March. The Kingston line branches southeast at Braintree to service Weymouth, Whitman, and Kingston near Plymouth. Together, the 2 lines saw roughly 9,300 riders in 2022. The Needham line is one of the shortest in the system. At 13.7 miles, the line runs from South Station to Needham Heights via Roxbury, Jamaica Plain, and Roslindale. The Fitchburg line runs from Boston's North Station in a westward direction to Fitchburg, servicing 15 intermediate stations. It is the system's second longest line behind the Providence-Stoughton line, and is one of the worst in terms of on-time performance, owing to the interruptions from freight trains. The Fairmount line is the system's shortest line, at 9.2 miles. The line runs from South Station to Redville via Dorchester and Mattapan, servicing 7 intermediate stations. The line is almost exclusively within the city limits of Boston, except for a small portion that lies in Milton. The last line in the system is the Greenbush Line, which opened in 2007 and is 27.6 miles long. From South Station, the line runs south to Braintree, where it turns east to service Hingham and Greenbush via the South Shore Railroad. The line saw 2,600 daily riders in 2022. In terms of forward progress, the MBTA's Regional Rail Modernization Program looks to bring electric regional rail to the system, rather than being a diesel-powered commuter rail. In 2019, the MBTA contracted with Network Rail Consulting to plan the regional rail network. Network Rail Consulting is the international consulting arm of Network Rail, the government-operated owner of most trackage, stations, and infrastructure in the United Kingdom. MBTA also has the South Coast Rail Project, which returns service to the cities of Taunton, Fall River, and New Bedford via the Old Colony lines. And with that, we come to a close in today's video about the MBTA Commuter Rail Network. I hope you found this video informative and enjoyable. If you did enjoy, please be sure to like and subscribe. If you want to see a more focused video on an aspect of the system, please do comment it below. Thank you for watching and have a great day.